Hello and welcome once again to Loveland's Talking. My name is Andy Hiller. I'm here with the City of Loveland as their Public Information Officer to share with you, the public, information about what's going on here with your local government. It seems like every time you turn the TV on, especially during prime time, it begins with kind of an ugly, bloody corpse on the floor, followed by some people walking in wearing rubber gloves and little booties on their feet, a crime scene. And it seems like there are many of them on TV. It's very popular. I played with Google a little bit and came up with shows called Crime Scene, Famous Crime Scene, CSI, CSI Las Vegas, CSI Miami, CSI New York, and who knows, maybe there's a CSI London and Paris in Europe. I don't know. But I did not find a CSI Northern Colorado. But kind of that's what we're going to be talking about today here on Loveland's Talking, because beginning in a few months, the shovel will go into the ground to start the construction of a new regional forensic lab. I have crime lab up on my slides, but forensic lab is the more proper title. So that's what we're going to be talking about here today on Loveland's Talking. And with me are two law enforcement officials from northern Colorado who have been instrumental in getting this project off the ground. So we'll begin by letting our guest begin first from Weld County. Ron, would you introduce yourself?
Yes, I'm Ron Arndt with the Weld County Sheriff's Office and the Greeley Police Department. Actually, they both pay half my salary.
Oh, okay. And how are you involved with this project?
I am the lab manager of the regional lab, and so I've been the one who was brought in to kind of put all the pieces together and formulate the design, a little bit of the design of the building, and kind of bring all of the pieces of the lab into one facility.
Sounds like you're kind of the quarterback for this project.
You could call me that. Yes.
Okay. And Ray, you're a familiar face here in Loveland.
Yeah, I'm Ray Miller with the Loveland Police Department, and I'm currently a division commander with the police department that oversees our investigations unit, and I sit on the executive board of the lab group now, and I have been for about 2 years.
Okay, and you said lab group, so that's where we're going to begin, because right now there is no regional forensic lab, a building or lab of any sort like that. So when you folks need to do something with the evidence you collect at a crime scene, how is that done? Who does it?
Well, it's kind of a misnomer that there is no lab per se. We currently function out of a number of different buildings now, but the components of the lab group are in place. When officers collect evidence at a crime scene, be it a burglary, a homicide, whatever it is, we'll take that evidence, we process it, and put it into our evidence area, and then from there we request assistance from the lab group, and whether it's DNA we need or we need a weapons examined. We request an examination through the process of forms filled out. Evidence is then transported to whatever appropriate location within the lab group. It may be Greeley for digital evidence. It may be Laramie County Sheriff's Department for gun trace evidence, or it may be Fort Collins for latent fingerprint examination right now. There are experts that work within the function of the lab from each of those agencies that represent the lab that will perform whatever examination we need on that evidence.
So instead of everybody being under one roof, you guys have sort of an agreement among the law enforcement folks and the facilities throughout northern Colorado to assist one another. Is that right?
Essentially that. What happened about 3 years ago is that the board decided it would be better off if they went ahead and put all of the individuals in a specific discipline in one location rather than having a fingerprint examiner in Greeley and one in Weld County and one in Loveland and one in Fort Collins. It would be a lot easier. Let's put them all together in one roof. They can talk together, and we can bring all of that latent print evidence to one facility, and they can work together there. And so about 3 years ago, they did that. So we put our latent print examiners all under the Fort Collins Police Service roof. and they do all of their work in Fort Collins. The digital media got together, and we put them in the Weld County building out there.
Right. Digital media, what is that?
Digital media, I'm sorry, digital
That's
media
okay.
is actually a newer forensic discipline, and it basically involves the examination of anything that you can record electronically, whether that be a cell phone, a iPad, a computer, any electronic device, a camera, any electronic device that might contain evidence that would be of value to the law enforcement agency in investigation of a crime, we can look at that. And so that all kind of fits under that digital media component. And it's a continually growing field. Probably it's growing like DNA was growing in 1990s. That is the area where it's growing a lot now, just people using that.
I'll bet nobody writes things down on paper anymore. Everything is done electronically, digitally.
That is correct.
And it's my understanding, whether we like it or not, as hard as we may try, once something is created, it's pretty much there forever, whether it goes out on the internet or a hard drive or that sort of thing.
Absolutely. And people like to write things down. They like to log things in, and they like to record them and save them electronically. And so we go and look for what they've saved. And so that's the digital media section. And then we also have a firearms examiner that's working out of Larimer County Sheriff's Office. And then we have chemists that are actually working in another facility in Weld County. And those chemists are actually CBI employees. So that group of people working together also includes the Colorado Bureau of Investigation.
Okay. CBI is?
The Colorado Bureau of Investigations.
I forgot to tell you beforehand, we have a little jar with a quarter, slot in it, and every time you use an acronym, you got to put a quarter in the jar.
Police departments are notorious for acronyms.
Yeah, yeah. So when you talk about these people doing these different functions, they're each employed by the various agency itself. In other words, there's somebody who is employed by Weld County Sheriff's Department working under your roof, while there's somebody under the Fort Collins Police Department roof, etc., and they get their paycheck from Fort Collins. But if you need something from them or vice versa, you pick up the phone or send an email, a digital email, or whatever. Is that right?
Actually, the way the system is set up is that if an agency needs a specific work done, we have a request for laboratory examination. So we go back to the old paper. It's not electronic. It's, although they fill it out electronically, it's a hard copy, and they will give us that hard copy with the evidence, and they will bring that to the facility that it will be doing the work for them. So if Fort Collins has a latent print that they want examined, they will fill out a form, and they'll bring that to our latent print examiners and submit that evidence there. If it's a digital media request for that, they will go ahead, fill out the form, and they'll bring it to our guys in Weld County. So depending upon the discipline, but we get a request for laboratory examination with a cover letter that tells the laboratory examiner a little bit more about what the case is about and what it is that they're looking for and why they've submitted that evidence. And then what we'll do is we'll go ahead and put that into our stack of evidence, a stack of work requests that have come in, and we work those essentially first one in, first one out.
I see. Regardless of who initiates it.
That is correct.
Okay. So if it came from your own agency, that doesn't necessarily get top billing.
We don't prioritize it based upon an agency and having somebody there. It's based upon the need. We will prioritize a case if we've got a high-profile case or a case where an agency calls up and says, I need to have this put to the front. We will go ahead and prioritize those. But in general, it's first in, first out, regardless.
Gotcha. Okay, I have some slides of course, this isn't from the new facility because it doesn't exist yet, but these are some offices or facilities where this type of work is currently carried out, as I understand. So I'm going to go through them, and if you'll spend a moment or two explaining what we're seeing on each one. What are we looking at here?
This is the latent print examination area. There's a large table, it's actually two tables put together, where an examiner can place items onto that table and process those. To the right, there's a hood that we can do some chemical work in with some of the items of evidence. And in the very back in the foreground, we have a technique called supergluing, where we can take and put items into a chamber and superglue in a fumed condition will actually allow us to create or to find those fingerprints on those items, and then to go ahead and process that from there. So this is where our examiners do the latent print examinations.
Okay. What's this one?
Again, this is another area for latent print examiners. People recall, I think ever since I was born, the idea of just dusting for latent prints. And you can see that these are two hoods where that dusting would occur. And they're set up specifically so that that dust doesn't spread all throughout the rest of the building.
I see. Okay. And where are these photos? Where were these taken?
These photos, this is actually taken, this is quite a lot older. This is actually in Weld County when we had our latent print examiners in Weld County before we brought them all together. So we still have the hoods. We haven't got those set up. We plan on, we've got specific spots in our new facility for those hoods to be set up in.
I see. So you'll take some of this equipment and bring it to the new facility when it's established.
Our plan is to go ahead and bring all of the pieces of equipment that we have in the individual labs and bring those into that new facility.
Gotcha. Okay. How about this one?
This is the work area for our firearms examiner in Larimer County Sheriff's Office, where he can take photographs if he needs to. You can see as there's a computer set up, and he's got a comparison microscope where he can look at a bullet or a shell casing. And what they do is they can mount shell casing on one side that came from a known gun that was fired, and that shell casing was collected, and then compare that to a shell casing that was found at the scene to see whether or not they came from the same gun.
Okay. Okay. And you mentioned this is from Larimer County. The previous slide was from Weld County. So what we're seeing is slides from some of the various current locations.
That is
right?
correct.
Okay.
That is correct.
Okay. This one?
These are the workhorses of the chemistry section. They're called GC mass spectrometers and I'm going to use an acronym because I can't pronounce it, FTI, Fourier Transformation IR spectra. But this is where the chemistry, the drug analysis is performed, and that is over in our Weld County Sheriff's Office. It's actually in the basement there.
I see. So if you get a, quote, powder or something, this is where you determine what it might be?
That's correct. A request for any kind of chemicals we can do here.
Okay. This one here, this one looks a little bit like my desk upstairs here.
And this is one of the work areas for our digital examiners. And off on the left, there's a really high-grade computer called a FRED, a Forensic Recovery of Evidence device. And it's the workhorse of our digital media people. And what they can do is, they use this area because they will take apart the computer, pull out the hard drive, they'll take apart a cell phone. So a lot of the things related to this, they actually have to get to the information source. And so they use the workbench to do that. And what they can do is they can go ahead and pull off of that the information that they need to do the analyses and then store that and perform their examinations and then put together a report.
Okay. Another?
This is another digital media area. You can see there's a lot of, the dark area there are the video screens from our audio-visual analyst. And when he gets a request for an examination of, let's say there's a video from a robbery at a 7-Eleven, they may have a DVR or something that they want us to look at to see, can you make this picture of this individual look better?
I see.
And so that's what we do, is try to make those pictures look better or see if we can identify an individual from that.
So when they do this on TV, boy, can they enhance these things. How realistic is that?
Well, not very realistic. And I certainly have no knowledge of the lab function at all. But from a police perspective and from going to trials and courts, this has kind of caused some problems for us with the public perception that, we can get evidence, and then within 30 minutes, we can have the case solved, and it's gone to trial, and everybody's guilty. That just doesn't happen. And unfortunately, we have sometimes in the court process, we have to overcome the jury's perception that that is reality. And so we rely on the evidence. The evidence tells us what it is, and the DA's office has to prosecute based on the evidence that's presented.
Gotcha. Okay. So let me ask you this. You said if one agency needs the services of another, you fill out a request form and hand it over. And then does agency B then bill agency A for its services? Do you bill Loveland if they perform a service and or vice versa?
No. That's the beauty of the consortium, and the beauty of us working together is that we can take advantage of the resources that another agency may be able to provide us that we can't provide ourselves, and it's kind of a quid pro quo relationship. We'll do it for them if we have a certain expertise that we can provide, and they need that expertise. We'll provide it to them, and again, it's no cost because we share the resources 100%. We pay for our lab technicians, they pay for their lab technicians, and like Ron said, we basically do the work first come, first serve as it goes in and out, and it doesn't matter whose it is, and that's the way it works.
Now, when we were talking a week or so ago, you mentioned CBI, Colorado Bureau of Investigation, also has, I guess, the premier central lab for Colorado. Is it somewhere in the Denver area, and that on occasion you will send materials down there as opposed to doing it here amongst yourselves? Is that right, and can you explain that a bit?
Well, the Colorado Bureau of Investigation has a laboratory in the Denver metro area that serves a part of the state of Colorado. They also have a lab in Pueblo and one in Grand Junction. Right now, we do not have the ability to do biological examinations, which include DNA. So if we have requests for that, we will go ahead and that evidence will be sent. Like if Loveland has a case, they will go ahead and send those items for biological and DNA analysis to the Colorado Bureau of Investigation directly, and they will go ahead and have that process there. In addition, there's also trace items. We don't have the ability to do the trace chemistry and the trace examinations that are required. Those are very specialized positions, and so CBI offers that service. So anything that we cannot provide for ourselves here, we will go ahead and that agency will just let that agency know that we cannot provide that service, and go ahead and submit that down to the Colorado Bureau of Investigation Laboratory.
I see. And I imagine there's got to be, at least physically, a little more turnaround time because it takes you longer or it's more difficult to cart whatever it is down to Denver and then pick it up as opposed to going to Greeley or Fort Collins with it, that sort of thing. On TV, they're always, the officers are always saying, well, I need this back tomorrow, and they say, well, but the lab takes 3 weeks, et cetera. You guys are both smiling. How much reality is that and how much not?
Well, when you talk
without getting yourself into trouble here.
Without talking, and kind of go back to that, what CBI has done, which is unusual, is that they have gone ahead and they've set up a receiving site in Greeley-Weld, so that if an agency wants to bring their evidence to CBI, they can bring it to Greeley as opposed to Denver, and save the travel time for their evidence examiners. So they've and CBI has a courier that will go ahead and curry that back and forth, which is a little different than turnaround time. And turnaround time actually it's just the fact that if you've got X number of people and X number of cases, they can only work so many at any time. So depending upon the volume of evidence being submitted, we can either turn around immediately, and if you're like TV shows, you have one case, and you've got a lot of people that work one case, you can probably get it done in a very short time frame.
An hour.
In an hour or half an hour, absolutely, with commercials. We don't have that luxury. We have a specific number of individuals. We have assigned 5 latent print examiners for this region. But on any one day, we may, any one agency may collect 2 or 3 or 4 latent prints on cases or more. And so if you take that 2 or 3 times 5, now we have 10 to 15, maybe 30 that come in, and those go in. So we create or they generate some kind of a backlog. But what we do is, again, we work first in, first out, and we prioritize cases so that if it's important, we get it out. And so we've kept up, and we kind of measure our productivity based upon our ability to turn cases around, and we measure that on a time frame. And generally, we're anywhere from 30 to 90 days, depending upon the discipline and the work out there.
I see. Okay.
And CBI, prioritizes things very similar. High-profile cases, like the Jessica Ridgway case, they will, in most cases, drop everything and deal with the evidence that's coming in on that, trying to find the suspect if they can. And then if you get a DNA sample submitted on a regular burglary, it's going to sit there and wait a little bit because they got to prioritize the higher profile cases.
Sure, sure. Okay, okay. Well, that's how this is being done now. Let's look ahead a little bit. And this is the future of this effort here in northern Colorado. This is the lab. I guess my first question would be, how large is this going to be?
It's a 20,000 square foot building.
Okay, and I'm trying to picture what that would correspond to that I might. No, I guess I can't think of anything right.
About 10 2,000 square foot houses.
Oh, well, thank you. Okay, so my whole block with the houses right next to it, that's pretty substantial.
It's a fairly good sized building.
Yeah, yeah, okay. And what facilities will it contain? I have a floor plan here. I don't know if anybody's going to be able to read that. I was hoping maybe we could kind of go around and if you guys can read it, more power to you. But what are some of those sections there?
Well, if we start at the bottom left,
Okay.
that will be the chemistry area. So we'll have a drug chemistry facility where we'll have analysts that currently work up in this area doing the drug chemistry. Right above there, we have set up a place for biological sciences. That is the one discipline we don't have currently in our laboratory area here. And they will do they will look at clothing items and such for possible DNA that they can find, and then they'll do the DNA analysis in that area.
Is that where, again, in the TV and the movies, where fibers are examined and that sort of thing?
Well, we do not have the ability. A hair fiber is actually a trace discipline, and it takes a very specialized individual to be able to do that. So we will go ahead and collect those items, and then those will actually go to the CBI lab in Denver for analysis by their fiber examiners.
Go ahead.
Above there is our firearms section, where our firearms examiners will work. To the right of that is our latent print area, and that's where our latent print examiners will be working. And then to the right of that, in that top corner there, is where the digital media section will be set up.
I see.
Below that is where our evidence bay and vehicle bay, where we process evidence and store evidence. There's an administration area, and then there's some areas, just common areas for our examiners. We're set up to where the examiners will work in the laboratory, but then they will have a separate office area outside the lab where they can work and do. Most people think you're always going to be working in a lab, but you've got to write reports, you've got to interact with other people, there'll be conference areas and things like that. So it is set up, I believe, to make us very, very efficient and effective in what we do, and to make sure that the evidence that we process is secure and the integrity of that evidence is maintained the entire time it is actually in our facility.
I can't help but think that an expert in one area may have some knowledge in some of the other areas either as well, and simply by everybody being, quote, under the same roof, shoulder to shoulder, that they can interact with each other and share information, or say, hey, Bob or Mary, maybe you ought to take a look at this as well, without it having to be form filled out and transported from one building to another, I would think that would make things a lot more efficient.
Well, I don't know if that's how it works or not.
Okay.
To be honest with you, from the lab perspective, I do know that having people in the same building, they will most likely be working on similar or even the same cases. One from a chemistry perspective, one from a latent print, and that evidence tells each examiner one piece of the puzzle, and then they can come together and talk about what they've seen without having to go to building. So I think there's some of that synergy there, but how much, I don't know.
And I know, and this is before I started work here, but when they brought the discipline, like all the latent print examiners, into one facility, we found the turnaround time and the effectiveness of that discipline went up immediately. And that was because they were sharing together and they were talking and interacting. And when there was a question, they could talk about it. And we're hoping that that same concept or idea applies to the lab as a whole. That when I have a case where I need a latent print examiner and a chemist and a firearms examiner and a biologic science, all of them together talking about that case, and then bringing in an investigator instead of having them drive all the way up to Denver. They can drive over from Fort Collins or Loveland, and they can sit down with the examiners and talk about that case. We've got to become more effective by doing that. Yeah. It just makes sense,
Sure.
common sense.
Sure. How many folks will physically be working at the building?
Initially, I think we're looking at 15,
Oh, okay.
14 to 15, and then we have created it so that there will be room for growth and for agencies to add other people into the mix as funding is available, or as we may bring in another agency that might want to participate in the laboratory.
And will this basically be the same folks who are doing it at the individual locations then moving here, new hires, or some of both?
Well, I think right now it'll be the people that are working in the various components now will all be brought into there. And then obviously in the future and part of the business plan and for each of the agencies that are involved will be to increase the staffing as budgets permit.
Okay. Okay. And physically, where is the building going to be?
34 and 250, Highway 257.
57 is
So,
runs north out of
so
Windsor.
where that Y, when you're heading east on 34, where that Y breaks into business,
The
Greeley
overpass.
and the overpass,
Yeah.
just past there. I
just
think
a-
there's a Pepsi distributor center right there. We're going to be just to the east of that.
On the south side of 34.
I see. That's very centrally located.
Yes.
It is, and it makes it real easy for a lot of
Right
traffic.
off the highway, yeah. That ought to be good. Good. Okay. Bottom line, how much is this going to cost and who's going to be paying for it?
Now, the commissioners of Weld County have offered $4 million, and so they are paying for the facility. And they're the ones that are involved in the oversight of that building. And it's actually, the last time I was out there, the contractor that won the award, Roche Construction, had actually started, and the grounds have been dug up and moved, and dirt's been moving
So they've
around.
already broken ground on it. Huh?
They've moved a lot of dirt out there in the last 2 or 3 weeks. So I go out once every Monday, take some pictures, and then kind of record that over time and see how that growth
I see.
occurs.
Okay. So Weld County, the commissioners are going to build and own the building.
That's
What
correct.
about the other participants? And go through the participants again, the consortium members who will be using this.
In the lab group currently as it stands now, there's the Loveland Police Department, Fort Collins Police Services, Larimer County Sheriff's, Weld County Sheriff's Office, Greeley Police Department, and the Colorado Bureau of Investigation.
Okay.
And throughout, with an intergovernmental agreement, each of those agencies have committed an amount of money for operating and maintenance. The difficulty we've had with that is trying to guesstimate, an educated guess, how much it's going to cost each agency to do that. I believe Ron has had some money earmarked from grants for the initial operating and maintenance, which gives us some idea. However, each agency has committed approximately $70,000 a year initially for the operating and maintenance to go into this building.
I see. Okay, so you guys will build it and everybody together will maintain it and keep it going and improve it, or whatever else needs to be done.
That is the goal. That
Okay.
is the goal. So.
Okay, all right. Well, we've talked about some of the efficiencies in general. Are there any other things that you want to point out? I mean, it doesn't, even I can kind of grasp the big picture that it sure makes a lot more sense to have all these people working together under one roof than scattered all over 2 counties. How else would you characterize all the benefits that will come out of this?
Well, from an end user, and I'm saying end user being the police agencies, it makes it so much more convenient for us, again, to deal with taking the evidence to a centrally located place. Like we said, it's very centrally located for northern Colorado. For Greeley, they come west a little bit, we go east a little bit, Fort Collins comes south a little bit. As opposed to going to Denver for all of this stuff, it's very convenient. As Ron had mentioned, the fact that we get all these people in one building, they talk about the cases, they talk about similarities and things, it can't help but add to the efficiencies and effectiveness of all the agencies as a whole.
And one of the goals that we're trying to meet, not just to have a facility that is centralized, but also to become accredited by a national board. And that is something that is going to be absolutely critical down the road, because as we've seen around the country, problems in some laboratories in cities and states where they've had difficulties, and the Congress has been looking at creating more control in the forensic science field and making sure that the laboratories have some accountability. So one of the goals that we have is also to get accreditation, and the Colorado Bureau of Investigation has offered their services in providing that. And to get our lab accredited will be the next goal once we get that facility built. And that will add some credibility. So when we're in the courtroom, we can say that we are an accredited laboratory. And I think that Loveland bringing evidence to us, well, we're bringing it to an accredited lab. So just like CBI is accredited, our laboratory will be accredited. And that adds that feather in the cap and just gives us a little bit more credibility and assurance to the agency submitting. So that's one of the other pieces of this that I think is going to be absolutely critical for us going forward in our plans.
When is the building, when is the ribbon cutting? Any idea?
I have been told that it will be sometime in the fall of 2013.
Okay, so
Weather holds, it might be sooner, but we're looking
more or less little less than where we are right now here in December. And will a lot of the equipment and materials that you're currently using in the various locations be brought there, or will everything in there be brand spanking new in terms of the equipment? Obviously, the furniture and everything has to all be built in, but some of the other more unusual pieces.
Yeah, the equipment that we currently use is still good, and we're bringing that in. There's no sense in just throwing that out. The challenge will become in bringing some of that equipment, because it's large and it's got to be moved and some walls torn down to bring it in. But our plan is to bring all the equipment we currently use into that facility, and then to kind of build from there and use some grant money and other funds to build up where we need some additional items of equipment.
Sure. Okay. Well, this will be very interesting to see. Will you have a, quote, grand open, ribbon cutting, a tour? This would be something that I think a lot of people would enjoy before you actually get busy with it, taking a walk through.
We have some kind of plans set up to where there'll be probably a ribbon cutting, and then maybe some tours set up so people can get into it, look around, see what's there. At some point in time, we're going to have to shut it down so that we can operate and do the work that we want to do. So our plan is to kind of make it out there, make it available for people to walk through and look at, and then shut the thing down and start working. So
next fall, next winter, something like that.
hopefully next fall,
Okay.
late summer.
Okay, good. All right. Anything else you guys want to add before we call it a day? Okay.
That covers it.
Well,
Thank you very much.
let me thank you two folks, fellas, for coming over and participating in this and explaining this new exciting project. And a happy holiday and a good New Year's to you. And I want to especially thank the folks at home for tuning in to Loveland's Talking again. And as we do every month, we appreciate your viewership. And again, to you folks especially, have a happy holiday and a good New Year's. And we'll see you. God, it'll be a whole year before we do this again. Imagine that. Okay, take care. Bye-bye now.